Hello, and Tansei. My name is Todd Lyons, and I am the author of this book, Chrysogon's Coterie, 288 NPCs for your basic fantasy RPG campaign. And I thought I would just do a flip through of my own book. I don't know if artists do this, look at their own work. But I'm mostly just doing a test recording just to try out the software. And as long as I'm here, I thought maybe I could do something that's potentially shareable and useful. So anyway, what is this book? I've described it a few different ways in different places. Most obviously it's 288 NPCs, and it's specifically written and published. Although it's only in PDF right now, as the time I'm recording this, it will be in print eventually, I'm told, by the end of this year. It's for the basic fantasy role-playing game, but you could easily adapt it to any old school Renaissance, old school revival system, because at their heart they all come from the same, early 1980s legacy product, the Dungeons and Dragons game, basic and expert. I've also described this as a love letter, and I'm not sure that I've ever said, well, yeah, I've said publicly. This is also a reaction to an earlier book. First thing to say is that basic and expert, even though it's the first game that I ever ran as a dungeon master, it's not how I came into contact with role-playing games. My first experience as a player was first edition's Dungeons and Dragons, and this must have been about 1979. And there's no way, no way that I could have afforded these premium product hardcover books back in the day. But I had a friend who, his family was well off. They owned several radio stations. So for them, dropping whatever it would cost in modern currency for a monster manual, a player's handbook, and a dungeon master's guide. In fact, we may even have started before the publication of the DMG. So maybe this was 78. In any case, they had deep pockets. They were more than able to afford the cost of buying these expensive games, even though they were a Catholic family and the Satanic Panic was going to become a thing. I'm from the middle of nowhere. Maybe we were kind of isolated from some of that insanity where we lived. But I don't think we took it all that seriously. We were just kids, living inside of our imaginations. Could have been worse. That was how I was introduced to the game, and at the time, I really couldn't afford these books. I have a complete first edition collection now, but it's taken me 40 years to put that together. But the first book that I ever bought, I think, this would have been around 1980, was the Rogues Gallery. So the Rogues Gallery, it wasn't a hardcover book. It wasn't a color book. It had blue and white and black. That's all it was. And therefore, it fit pretty nicely into what I could afford. But I have to say that when I first got it, I was pretty disappointed, because what I anticipated was what I wanted, I guess, as a young player, was I wanted a monster manual. I wanted a monster manual that was for players, for NPCs. Meaning which, I didn't want what the Rogues Gallery was providing, even though it did have some cool stuff. I wanted pictures, I wanted a stat block, I wanted a description, I wanted some way of actually getting to know who these people were. So, and when I got this is a bad copy here, and I saw stuff like this that looked like a financial report with cool art on it. You basically have these very dense tables, and I remember having to take out a ruler to be able to even decipher what this stuff was. And then, there's no way that you could use it at a glance. You would have to copy all these things over to a sheet, like a proper character sheet, to make them usable. And I thought, as far as having a quick and easy reference book, something that you could use at your table, the way that you have the monster manual there to check out in real time, that this is not going to work. This is not going to work. So, even though I give Brian Bloom credit for creating, a heck of a lot of content in a reasonably inexpensive book for the time, it certainly did not look the way that I wanted the book to look. So, I've grown to be more appreciative of it as a grown-up. I like the fact that the iconic characters played by Gary and his family and friends are detailed in the back of the book. I'm sorry, this is taking a while to catch up here. That those are all there, but for my purposes, it just didn't meet my expectations. So I was pretty darn disappointed. So for 40 years, it kind of just ate away at me that I wish that could be better. I could have done a better job writing that book. Which brings me, I guess, to the second thing, and that's basic fantasy role-playing game. I'd completely fallen out of the hobby, fallen out. I tried in my first year of university to do some playing, but it was hard to get a group of people to show up regularly because we were all nerds. And we were actually taking our studies fairly seriously. And I suppose for some of us, like me, that had never taken a final exam, really, a meaningful one as far as actual stress and having to be fluent in an entire year's worth of material, I had to really had to pin myself down hard to studying in order to be successful getting through the first year of school. And I imagine the same was true of a lot of people I met there. We met a couple times, but we just couldn't make it stick. We were all kind of snowed under with work. Yeah, all that to say, I graduated. I struggled during a recession to stay employed. Just got on my feet after nearly going bankrupt. And then I met the girl of my dreams, and we got married. We started the family. You know what? Suddenly 40 years had gone whipping by. And then COVID happened. And I guess like a lot of people out there, I felt very cut off, very isolated. And it was actually my wife that suggested that I get into the hobby again. So when I started doing some initial exploration as to what's out there, keep in mind, my basic and expert was long gone, even though in those 40 years, I had become very affectionate of the simplicity of that game and just how it wasn't any bigger than it needed to be. And you could concentrate so much on just what you as a character believed that you could do, and then trying to do that within a very simple mechanic system. Not a lot of necessity to be looking at your character sheet. So I didn't have my basic and expert books anymore. So I looked around to see what was available. And of all the different systems that I looked at, the one that I loved the most was Basic Fantasy Role-Playing Game. Even just the book by itself would have been enough to get my attention, because I love the way that it tried to emulate that 1981 version of the game that I had purchased, as in a box set. Because again, that was something that fit my budget back in the day between delivering papers and mowing lawns and stuff. Not only did it do a good job of approximating that game, but it made some sensible house rule changes and folded that into the new game. So things like Ascending Armor Class, which I just love. It makes so much more sense. And throws away things like alignment, which was always a struggle. And just gets back to 4 basic races and 4 classes. And as far as differentiating yourself, people, I think, forget what RPG is. They think of it as a game, but they forget that the RP is role-playing, and that you're supposed to inject personality and character and differentiate yourself through the way that you play your character. Just limiting it to 4 classes really puts a lot of onus on the player themselves to be the creative force in trying to make their fighter different from the other fighter, or their cleric different from the other cleric. And instead of obsessing about your character sheet and your feats and your skills and stuff like that, your special powers, which is something that's very popular with the modern incarnations of role-playing game. It's again, yeah, it's just, I know it's great for some people, and maybe for people that come into the hobby at that level, that's the new normal for them, and what this is would seem extraordinarily backward. But I came in, like I said, pretty early, while the TSR was still finding its footing as a company and just starting to take off. And I like the fact that the game was simple, that they created this even more simple version, the basic and expert box sets, as a way to onboard people to the hobby. And in doing so, they accidentally created this independent, separate, beautifully streamlined system that, with every decade that's passed, has just become something that I love more and more. Which brings me to calling this book a love letter. So, in repairing, fixing, making the version of the Rogues Gallery that I wanted to do, I thought, well, who should I produce this book for? And it seemed to make a lot of sense that I would do it for the system that I discovered that made the sensible house rule changes, fix-its, adaptations, modernization, while still having a very old school feel to it, the basic fantasy role-playing game. And Chris himself, when he created this game, he did it for entirely pragmatic, practical reasons. He's a little older than me, but we had that same box set, and he seems to have used his a lot more heavily. I sold mine at a certain point because I totally bought into that whole advanced Dungeons and Dragons thing, and it seemed like I should sell that and join the grown-up world, and regrettably that's what I did. I regret that. I regret that so much. But Chris, who had the good sense to hold on to his books, used them to the point where they got pretty ratty, pretty falling apart. So in creating this game here, he was basically providing himself and his players with up-to-date copies of the basic and expert house-ruled game that he enjoyed consistently over that same period of time, from the early 80s until when he published it. But even though he created for those entirely practical, pragmatic reasons, like it is a product to meet a need for him and for people, as soon as he made that decision to make it an open source project and to share his creations with the world, to allow people to influence and expand and put their work with his work and then publish their work alongside his work, and to make no profit or such a minuscule amount of profit that it's surely not a commercial enterprise, but by selling these books at near cost. He created a community, so it was an absolute no-brainer that I would write for this system. If this book was going to be written at all, that's the system that was going to be written for. And I'm grateful if it gets used by OSE or Labyrinth Lord or what have you, any of the compatible systems. But it was very important for me to put my contributions to open source into this project, which my 10-year-old self that struggled to save money to buy TSR products would have been so grateful for a system like this sold at just the cost to print it, and maybe 50 cents extra on a book, where you can basically buy the entire system and not be piecemealing the cheapest pamphlet stuff that the TSR put out. So that's why this book exists. It was just sitting in me all those years, but I was inspired to give back to something that had given me so much. Which brings me to this book. I use Chris's own website to generate the stats for the characters. And even though you can use them as you can ask with your game master's consent, it says in the subtitle, you could run these as player characters. They skew, I think, a little on the more powerful side, like you would in real life, I guess. I re-rolled some of these several times over until I thought, okay, that's a viable character. but they are constrained for the purpose of being compatible with the core book to the 4 races and the 4 classes. I've tried to do a nice even split to get a nice gender balance and to get a human non-human balance, because I'm kind of bored. I'm bored by campaigns where it's too human. It's neat when you just have like diversity. Where you have backgrounds that are drastically different, cultural differences, physical dissimilarity, and it really puts the onus on you to figure out, well, how do we leverage the fact that we have this diversity to its best effect as far as being effective adventurers. So this book came out in November, I think November 25th, 2022 is when I made the first posting publicly on the Basic Fantasy forums. I hoped that I would hear back from people actually using this book out in the world, and one person, Daniel Collins, he started using the book actively. He put it onto the RPG Geek website, which catalogs all sorts of RPG materials for any system. And we got in touch, and he told me that he'd adopted one of my characters and was putting it into his campaign. And he was using the RPG Geek website to actually do little write-ups on adventures and stuff. So I've had the good fortune of being able to not only follow the progress of one of my characters out in a campaign out in the real world being used. Daniel actually was so interested in my book that he wanted to help out. He joined the project. He has done extensive work to find all the little errors and mistakes and to ask for clarification on things that make complete sense to me, because when you're the writer of something, you just don't have that distance to be able to assess it. You have no objectivity. You know what you meant, and you know what you're trying to accomplish. But until you put something like this out into the public eye, you can't see where all the defects are in it. So that's why I love this page. I love that Chris was one of the first people to take an interest in it, and Kyle, who he's written a wonderful, wonderful adventure, The Black Apple Brew, which you should absolutely go and buy. It's considered one of the very best adventures for this system, and for any OSR system. It's very easy to translate into whatever basic expert retro clone that you have that you choose to use. Leon Atkinson, he's also in the midst of writing a book right now. You should check out the forum. You should see what we're up to. This game is in constant development by people that love it. But it doesn't matter if you're a writer like Leon or Kyle, or whether actually Daniel's done some materials too. He hasn't published anything for Basic Fantasy yet, but he's a brilliant editor, and I'm so grateful to have met him. Chris, James, and Alan, they are like core team members that have... if you have any sort of printed copy of any Basic Fantasy role-playing publication, their names are going to be in there, because they take whatever wreck of a first draft that you put up there, and they will help you shape it into something beautiful. So, yes. So I originally did put this, if you look at the cover on the left and then the licensing on the right, you can see there's a mismatch. We were still doing the OGL at the time that I made the submission, and it was within like 2 months that, maybe not even that, 6 weeks, that Chris made his plea that we needed to excise the OGL from all of our material. So the cover's not been updated there, but as you can see, it's now a Creative Commons project, our product, CC by SA, attribution share alike, on the credits page. So let's just have a real quick flip through. I've spent so much time just talking about background, but yeah. So that you can read yourself. It's just me blathering on about what my feelings are, and you've heard so much of that already, so why would you want to hear that? Start with clerics because it's alphabetical. The trend in this book is that I know that people have very different feelings about backstories. So in creating this and differentiating it from Brian Bloom's product back in 1980, I want you to be able, as a dungeon master, to be able to read something very quickly and get a sense what makes this person tick. What's some background information, short, pretty digestible, that gives me some sense of who this person is, how they would react to unknown people and unknown situations. Because as a player, and as a dungeon master, I struggled. It's easier for me to imagine someone physically than to imagine them psychologically. So this book comes from that perspective, and I know some people disagree. And the wonderful thing is you could write your own book if you want to do it your way. In the same way that I didn't like, that's too strong a word. I saw that there were things that I would change about the Rogues Gallery, and this addresses those things. Okay, here's another example. I found out later, after I'd already published this, that there was a book that sort of was more similar to what I was thinking, and it's called The Shady Dragon Inn, and it was written by Carl Smith. So I dug and I dug and I dug, and I found a PDF copy, got a PDF copy, and even though it does have more of this sort of look as far as its design, had I gotten a copy of that as opposed to the Rogues Gallery, I still would have wanted to write this book anyway. Because, again, it comes from a very sort of physically description-oriented perspective where, Jarl the fighter is 6 foot 2 inches tall and 248 pounds with flaming red hair, that kind of stuff. And just coming from the way that I think, the way that my brain works, it's much easier for me to imagine a character, how they might look, based on their stats, and not really need you to spoon feed it that way as part of the block. Whereas these blocks of text here are, it's psychology, it's history, it's genealogy. It's something that gives you a background of what makes this person tick? How could I play this person? Because I want you to be able to read this and get some sense of personality that you can start injecting into that character from the moment that your players set eye on them, like wherever you meet. They're already going to have some sort of a distinguished mannerism, approach, worldview, what have you, that really impresses on your players, like, oh, okay, this is not some generic background person. This is a lifelike character. And admittedly, there's not much to go on here. I just want to give like a little snippet to get your brain going, and then you fill in the rest of the details in the same way that I imagine you will fill in their physicality, what they look like, based on what you know from what these little paragraphs give you. What else do you want to say about them? Now, before I go any further, I should say that go back to the front page there, the credits page, and just look at the artists, because everyone that contributes to a basic fantasy role-playing book is doing this. It's for love. It's not for money. And I am so grateful for the person that made this cover for me, and also so much of the interior work, including the one that's under Wilhelmine there. And that's Gabe Fua. I love his style. I love it. There are a lot of talented people that work for this project, giving of themselves, their time and effort, so that there are pictures to go with our words. And he'd never done a cover. And I had looked at all the stuff that he'd published on the forum, and I thought, oh, that's a shame. That can't stand. We have to fix that. So I offered, I said, I've written this book. Would you be interested in making a cover for it? And he was very open and very curious and asked me what I thought we should do. And just off the top of my head, I described a scene. And this is that scene. Oh, and while we're on this page, number 2, that's Beethan O'Brien. he is the character that Daniel adopted and put into his campaign, and has gone on a wonderful adventure. And just basically using the description that I gave, made that sort of a character that is profoundly immature, but has so much potential, skill to go on and be someone great and do something great. If they can just, like I said, survive the current habits. So it was so neat to see this person fall in with a group of adventurers, go through some amazing experiences, and now is at a point where he's going to enter like a career of public service, protecting a village, And I see that just as the beginning of an arc. I'm not sure what Daniel's plans are for him. I think at some point, I think he's suggesting that that the townspeople that were saved by that campaign's recent efforts, they're in need of someone to come in and protect the village. So he may get offered a job, he may take it, but if he stays there long enough, he'll probably end up being in charge of managing like policing and security, and probably he could be the mayor. This is what I've told him, but the characters are not in my hands anymore. It's really up to everything in this book is a suggestion. It's a starting point. The names, the genders, the descriptions, any of the stats. Some authors have this strange desire, just like it's like they think that they've written the Bible. That's not me. I would not have put this out into the public sphere under a Creative Commons license if I had any of those sorts of feelings. I want you to read this and be intrigued. I want you to be annoyed. I want you to think, oh, he blew that. This is what this character should be. This is where I would move this direction to. Do that. Absolutely do that. Look through this whole book, and don't read it like cover to cover. Like, don't read it front to back. Jump around in it. Like, it's not meant to be sequential. You'll notice things about it if you do that. You'll notice that, in general, the lower level characters have less background than higher level characters. Generally. Some of them already have some life experiences which are in here, but some of them haven't done very much, because that's the whole point in Basic, is that you are meeting these characters. They're not superheroes. It's not 5e. They are not these amazing people that have had amazing experiences, and they just level up with this insane vertical takeoff. These are, country bumpkins, sort of washouts, people that are bored. The cleric that got kind of bored, doing laundry and at the temple, and decided, you know what? I want to go out and take my message to the people, or I want to go out and be a protector of public safety. On the other hand, there's also characters that are quite high, and you can see that they really haven't developed. They haven't gone through any maturation process. They're still very stuck, living a very small existence, and that's just a reflection of reality. Some people do not get better with the passage of time, whereas other people, like Beethan here, he has all the ingredients to have a transformational experience. So why is it so important for me to take this approach? Well, my background is social work, and I think one of the editors that maybe a couple of people that read this thought, oh, neat. So you've taken like your experience with clients and stuff and you've poured that into a book. No, absolutely not. Like, most of my professional experience is in child and adolescent mental health work. So these are not characters. These are young, helpless little beings that haven't even come into their adulthood, that don't even, they're not making mistakes. They're not bad. They are still finding themselves, and they're struggling. So, not only is it despicable, distasteful, it's there's no way that I would hijack their experiences or my experiences with them and think that is suitable fodder for a book like this. But I am a person in my 50s now, and I've met professionally, personally, just as a person that lives in this world. I have met all kinds of people, all types of people from all walks of life. And I have some memorable experiences. And the other thing that you should know is that part of being a social worker is going through a journey of getting to know your own self. So in addition to hundreds of little bits of, minor aspects of people that I have crossed paths with in my life, my own DNA, my own discoveries of myself, my tendencies, my characteristics, and my flaws and stuff are weaved in literally dozens of places in this book. So if anyone is to be implicated for this book it's not a biography of any one person. It is aspects of many, many, many people, and of all the people, I probably show up the most minor aspects in dozens and dozens of characters. Yeah, because write what you know, right? That's the core rule of writing. Write what you know. I had so many experiences and so many thoughts, and it was just, this book poured out of me. I wrote it in 15 8-hour days. 15 8-hour days. At no point was I struggling to figure out, what should I put here and what should I do. There's some intersection and similarity between certain characters. There, as in with real life, not everyone is, individual and bears no similarity to anyone else. But there's a lot of individuality across these characters. So when you're reading the book, open a page, flip through the book, stop at a picture that you like, start from, okay, I want to see a fighter, like a level 5 fighter, and I'm looking for a human one, see what's there. I've also, if you've seen, there's like a 1d8. So if you want to say, okay, need a 6th level cleric, there's a little index in the side here, at least in the PDF version. Haven't created such a thing for the printed version, but we will jump over that. We'll get there when we get there. And then roll a d8 and just see what you like. Read that. If you don't like it, look at the adjacent characters. Read all the characters that are in that section that matches, and use that, or use it as a starting point, as I said. Anyway, let's keep going. Yeah, Gabe, thank you, Gabe, and John. John's done a lot of covers, but I was in the fortunate position to just pick from the best of the best of the best to put, all the artists in here. There's a couple that have never published anything anywhere before, but there are other experienced ones. There's Burger Babylon on the left. Another Gabe. Yeah. So in selecting the cover art here, I hope to try to get a nice even balance. So that's John and Gabe. Left is Gabe. I wanted to have sort of a picture density of about 3 pictures for 2 pages. So when you open the book and you see a left and a right page, on average, I was hoping that there are at least 3 pictures, And we're getting close to that. It's so close now that when I flip through it as a whole, I'm pretty satisfied with the amount of density of pictures. This is still a pre-production copy. It is not finalized. This version was good enough that I thought I'm going to print out my own copy. I have a comb binder, some clear sheets, some photo paper for my inkjet printer, and color laser. I'm really happy with the quality of books that you can just make, just with what you can download from Chris's website. Pretty nice. I'm not sure that I will talk about any of these characters. Another thing that I'll say is that and this is something that's in that introduction, is that I created these not to be a bunch of completely individual, non-connected persons, because that's just not the world that we live in. So some of these characters really are. They don't know anyone, they don't interact with anyone, at least not by default. But on the other hand, some of them are friends, they are family members, they have partnerships, they're members of organizations. And the clerics, some of them, it specifies what temple they have affiliation with, and some of them it's not specified, just that that they work out of a temple or they're associated with a temple. And there are actually 25, if I remember correctly, 25 temples that are specified in this book. And if you if you see enough references, you probably will piece together some indication, or even just from the character and what they're like. You can come to get some sense of like, what kind of a temple is this? What mandate does it have? Who is it serving? Is it a good organization? This book is designed to sort of reward repeated reading and careful reading. The characters that know each other sometimes will talk about each other. They will reference each other in their little mini biographies. And as the author, I would say the best way to get to know any one character is to read all the connected biographies where other characters that they know talk about them. Because it's another truism that we see ourselves in a different way than how the rest of the world sees us. And really the only way to know yourself is to understand how other people see you. And again, that's something that's woven into this book. Let's keep flipping through. I love the art. We have such talented people in this organization. If you're an artist, if you're a writer, if you're a person like me that had an idea and it just sat around for 40 years and you didn't do anything with it, you might want to get to know this community of fans, of artists, writers, software developers. Maybe you've got an adventure that's just been, you've run it, it's been road tested, and you're looking for a place to have it published. If you can just do some tweaking to make it sort of fit the general format. Actually, even if you don't, I swear you could just give a bunch of raw text and it'll take time. I delivered something that was as close to what I could approximate as a printable version right away, and it's like 8-9 months in, and it's not printed yet because we're doing this in our spare time, all of us. But you could basically just give a bunch of text, and eventually it would be formatted by the production team, by volunteers, to look like a real, honest-to-goodness RPG book. But it's going to take time. The more work you can put up front as the writer, the quicker things will move along. This is also kind of a long book. If you've got a wonderful module that you made that's like only 30 pages, or 40 pages, I think, may be the minimum right now for actual publication. But we do these things called adventure anthologies, which we take all of the best, short adventures, and we bundle them together into a book. So there's more than one route to having your stuff actually published someday. Just keep in mind. Yeah. I think that's another Burger Babylon there. I just love the idea of flawed characters. So Heath, I don't know if, I don't think he's anywhere near my favorite character in the book. But he's just such a lousy thief. And when I saw this picture, I thought, you know what? This is a pretty good. Here's a good example of a ne'er-do-well, maybe he should have rethought his career choice. And he's not the only thief in this book. That he's his own animal for certain, but there's a few of them there. When you actually read like what their career's been like, they really need to figure out what else they should be doing with their lives, and nothing to do with the moral value judgment of being a thief, but just because do what you're good at. Everyone deserves to be good, to feel competence. Some of these characters are not competent. Oh man. So here's a couple of examples of work that's from the public domain. For a book this size, what the density of pictures, like the ratio, that 3 per 2 pages that I was hoping for, there's just not enough out there. So, but there is a lot of public domain artwork. If you just have the patience to go out and hunt it down, and you can substantiate that it is public domain. But then for every one like that, there's another brilliant Gabe picture, or a Burger Babylon picture, or a Sketching John picture. BB, love those ears. So this one on the right here, that's from a brand new artist, Samantha. To my knowledge, she's never been published anywhere, but she's still a teenager. Her dad came to the website though and said, "My daughter would love to contribute some of her art to this project," and we were all so thrilled. And me, being that I was approaching sort of the late, we're in the final stretches to get this to print, was more than happy to find a space for Samantha's work. Love that expression. Gabe can paint a picture so well. Like his style has some variability. Some of his stuff is kind of rough. Some of it's very polished. But there's just mood and personality in his work, and I am so grateful that he and people like him are part of this project. It's sort of a cast of rotating characters. Like, this has gone on since, it's nearing its 20-year anniversary as a project. I think we just passed 17 or something. But people come and go. But any work that you contribute, large or small, is something that you can look back and think, it's a wonderful community of people, and they make things, to make gamers happy. And they don't care about making any money, and they don't care if you're an OSE fan or what you're actually running specifically as a system. We're just putting stuff out that we love, and that's whatever we can do in our spare time to put out there. And you could be one of those people, even if you only have time to work on one project, or you've got your summer holidays off and you're looking for something to do. Read stuff. Do some editing, catch some typos, ask some questions about things you don't understand. Your effort goes into something which will go out into the world as a permanent thing of beauty, that thousands of people will buy. And thousands more will just download for free in PDF, because we're just trying to put these materials into people's hands. There is another of Samantha on the right there. Brand new picture. Her stuff, this will probably be the first book that has it listed. We do tend to you'll see certain works of art that are particularly well regarded, reused in other products, because why not? But I'm very proud that I get to put some of her work in my book. That's kind of strange. I didn't really anticipate that the posing there is kind of very similar. I picked pictures based on descriptions and stuff like that, and I wasn't always sure how stuff would look. I'm not that bothered by this. It's a very similar pose by the same artist, done at two different times, at two different levels of complexity. Gabe does some beautiful color stuff and some beautiful, black and white, and line drawing stuff. But what I would probably do in this case, and this is something that can be figured out, maybe Chris will look at this page and think, rather than change the art to assign it to a different character, you just change the order of the characters and kind of separate them in time or in space, so that you don't notice that. Anyway, this page, it doesn't have any art, it's ripe for shuffling, for putting something on there, or even just put her last, so you've got kind of a page in between. So you don't instantly see the similarities between those two different people. There's Samantha's third one on the left. Yeah, I should be calling out more of John's work. He actually has his own little company, Sharp Mountain Games. You can find them on RPG Now. And he reuses some of his stuff. As an artist, you have a lot of freedom. We don't take possession. Look at me, I'm talking about basic fantasy role-playing game like it's something that's mine. But you know what? It's a community, and it really is. I may not be the big man. I'm not the guy in charge, but everyone that contributes to this feels some sense of ownership and responsibility. And I guess that's why I felt the freedom to talk that way just now. So that's John. Made that collage there. That's actually a combination of characters that I've seen. He uses his own work for his own independently published stuff, and that is absolutely allowed. We're not trying to own your stuff, like a certain company tried to do when it tried to strike down the open gaming license earlier in January 2023. We just want the rights to be able to use your stuff in a publication, but we hope that you would share in perpetuity under whatever specific license Chris uses. He has an agreement independently with each person for their work as an artist that's separate. The text is licensed under OGL or Creative Commons, depending on the version of the book that you hold in your hands. The art is its own special thing. Yeah, I could use some art there. This, that is public domain. But don't you love it? Like, so much personality in that. And I needed someone really unhinged, I guess, for that particular character. So that worked there. Thank you, Jody. Artist for Sithulf Harel. This is an interesting character because he looks like he's probably... I like how there's a little disconnect there between how you look at the stats, but how he really is. This guy is phenomenally fast, but he's not as strong as you think that he is. Like, look at those massive... Look at his hand there. Like, it looks like you could take out your whole bottom row of teeth. But he's not as strong as he looks. But he is way faster, and he would totally put you off your end. Like, if you react to him in a certain way based on just how he looks, he could totally get you. Anyway, it's beautiful. I love it when an artist Jody came and he said he wanted to. He's done a couple in this book. He was particularly interested in doing. I said, we kind of have a problem. We've got a lot of characters we got a lot of art for humans. We've got quite a bit for elves. We need way more like dwarf and halfling art. And I was grateful that he came forward. But unless an artist specifically asks me for, like, well, what do you think? Like Gabe did for this cover here. And then he basically created what I described with his own things sort of added on top. Jody just did what he thought would work. He just read the description and thought, okay. Anyway, I love being surprised. I love seeing what people come up with out of their own imaginations. Some artists are a little thrown by the fact it's like, well, you don't have any physical descriptions in your characters. And it's like, well, yeah, that's intentional. I really want you to imagine these characters the way that you want to imagine them. So we're up to 6th level. I'm not really going to talk much about the characters. Like I said earlier, I really want you to... here's an interesting one. That is a piece of public domain artwork that I've seen used as the cover of a certain RPG, which, well, I could be clever and say, I'm not going to name it. But honestly, I don't remember. I don't remember the system. If you know what system uses that as their cover art on their book, let me know. Put that in the comments. Oh, wow. Lucas Sabanis. I love... So when I was looking at the available cover art, and this was not specifically made, there were some characters where I just knew how I imagined that they would look, and this is one of those examples. This is a Burger Babylon picture, and when I saw just the way that he looks, and with the tattooed like runes all over his body, the suggestion that he's kind of elderly, but very powerful. for some of these characters, it was just a slam dunk. I knew exactly who that was and what page, what character they should be associated with. I actually tried to make it Chris's responsibility to just, like, I gave him, like, just here's 125 pictures. Use them wherever you want to. Anyway, he balked at that and said that he would really prefer it if I made that determination. And I suppose he's very wise. That was the right thing to do. And it's not that he couldn't have done it, certainly. But it was much faster for me to do it, because even though there are almost 300 people here, I feel like I know them all pretty well. And it was not that daunting to choose and think, oh, that is who that is. And Lucas was definitely one of those characters. Gieselmund, oh yes. It's another BB, Burger Babylon. And that psychotic, unhinged cleric, I just thought, I know who that is. Oh. And here's a description. Okay, I'm not going to read it. Read this one for Gieselman Fulltone, and you start to understand how it is that how people perceive themselves is entirely different from reality or how other people perceive them. And there are a number of characters that fall into this trap where the way they see themselves is a complete disconnect from the rest of the world. But he's one of the most, if not the most egregious examples of this. Here's an example of a person that's failed to grow. The Bannermains. Bernard Bannermain. He's never really thought that much about his development, his individuality, his growth as a character. He has a very limited scope, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Some people just want to be what their family has always been, and the most beautiful testament that they can make to their ancestors is just to carry on the family line and fulfill a role in society. And Bernard is one of those people. Yeah. Lexus Casas, he's interesting. Retired people that try to start a life quietly somewhere else. Yeah. I still think you should try to do that. It's good to try to reinvent yourself. So in general, as the characters progress in level, there's more that tends to be written about certain characters that have had more experiences. And in general, though, the paragraphs, the amount of text is about 150, 200% or more what you see in the earlier characters at the beginning of the book. Because, like any character in the game, as they have more experiences, there's more to write about them. But there are a few that either not very much is known about them, or they just really don't thrive. They're kind of who they are, and they're very sort of what's on the tin kind of people. Xana Chadwick. This is another example where I gave no guidance whatsoever, because I rarely do, unless you specifically ask me, like, how do you think this character is? Who do you think they are? 99 times out of 100, I will try to not to tell you how things look. The cover is an exception, I guess, because it's such a time-consuming thing to put effort into. I didn't want him to waste his time. Not that I would have probably said no to anything that he would have done for me. He's brilliant. Xana, I was just over the moon. I was so happy. Like, I had no idea what she looked like, and that's how she looks. And now that's who she is, as far as I'm concerned. He made that character into the person that person is. So Willow and Blossom, they have sort of a central role as far as being, I don't know, the resident do-gooders of an organization that helps keep an eye on how things are going within this community of people. There's Blossom. So that's an example of two people who they write about each other because they have this very strong intertwined relationship. Carling. Jeremy Putnam. So yeah, he did Xana also. I just love his clothing. I love his personality that he puts into a character. Just a very talented artist. Love it. So that's my book.